Over 17 African countries are heavily dependent on the franc CFA, and of the 17 African countries, Cameroon is inclusive. The visit of the French president in Africa, Emmanuel Macron, has raised a lot of issues and debates across Africa, with many viewing it as a movement or a visit for geopolitical and economic interest. Regardless of the case you put it, it is clear that Emmanuel Macron is coming to Africa or came to Africa for one main reason. The reason is to consolidate the French role in Africa in its former colonies, and also to seek for support regarding the Russia-Ukraine invasion, as the French government is being dragged down with food crisis owing to the fact that Russia and Ukraine are fighting and grain production is declining. The Russian government seems to have a lot in terms of production of grain, and controls 60% of grains in the world is produced in Russia and Ukraine, and also with 40% of energy produced in Russia that is being consumed by the European Union. In all of this, Africa seems to be the last hope for a sanctioned Russia who has been sanctioned, and a dependable French government to rely on in terms of raw material. How fast and how will this go? Is the coming up of the French president in Africa another form of colonization 2.0, as written in The Guardian? This is House of Commons with me, Tah Mai Javis. You're welcome back from that transition. We deeply apologize for the late start of today's program because of technical issues that we are experiencing at the level of the production machines. Of course, man do make machines, and machine has a way it functions. It is also been malfunctioned quite some time. Today's edition, we are joined in the United States by Mr. Fusi. Mr. Fusi, thanks for joining us and happy Sunday. I don't know if Mr. Godlove Fusi is listening to us. Mr. Godlove Fusi, happy Sunday.
How are you doing?
I can't get you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Happy Sunday to you too.
We've been struggling to get you via Skype. Is kind of challenging here in the studio, and also in Turkey is Anye. Anye, happy Sunday. Oh, we're having difficulties getting to Anye. Here in the studio, we have Professor Mac Anthony-Political. Happy Sunday, Professor Mac.
Thank you very much, Javis, and to my fellow panelists who are out there, and to my brother in the studio. We are indeed having difficulties in connecting with others, but I'm sure we'll do service to the particular topic that has been presented to us today, which is very, very important for a Pan-Africanist like I am.
Thank you. Happy Sunday to you, Mr. Edmond. Thanks for joining us.
Happy Sunday, Mr. Tah Mai Javis. Thank you for inviting me once more. I'm also grateful sharing a panel with a great professor, a great mind, Professor Mac Anthony, and I do believe as time unfolds, we'll have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
I'll begin with you, Mr. Fusi. When you look at the visit of President Emmanuel Macron in Africa, many, especially the Guardian, has claimed that it is another form of colonization 2.0, where Macron is coming back to consolidate the French role, and the Guardian put it that it is a visit of more coup d'etat, more misery, and a visit for poverty for millions of Africans. What is your take?
Oh yeah, I totally believe that. I don't see why Mr. Macron will come to Africa, come to Cameroon at this point in time when the global so-called powers are kind of firing up to recolonize Africa as well. Russia is on board. I mean, the U.S. has been there all the time. China, of course, China has overtaken Africa by every measurement. And Macron is feeling the heat. That's why he's rushing to Africa. I mean, he's rushing to Africa exactly to do just that, to recolonize Africa. And
670-671.
Yeah, but how do we understand this, where you have a continent which is very rich in human and natural resources, a continent that claims they have independent country and still depending on their former colonial masters who had dark past of colonialism, had history of human rights abuses within the colonial era, exploitation, and unacceptable acts committed against Africans, and coming back to say again, we're here for you.
By the way, can you tell your panel members to mute, please? I'm hearing noises from the production room. Can you tell them to media?
Okay.
Somebody speaking pidgin right now in the production room.
Can you get me? We're having difficulties in connecting there. I don't know if you got my question.
Can you rephrase the question, please?
My question is, how do you explain the fact that the continent seemingly is rich with human and natural resources? The same continent which has a dark colonial past with colonial masters who had committed unacceptable crimes against Africans in their home soil, coming back again to tell them the story of you still have to depend on us. How do you comprehend this in a continent where majority of the countries are independent or claim they are independent?
Well, you see, Africa is currently behaving like an abused woman, right? An abused woman in an abusive relationship. The more you abuse her, the more she wants to stay. Africa has been traumatized for more than 400 years through slavery, colonization, and the current recolonization by the Chinese, the Americans, and now the French. It is absolutely untenable that anybody with a brain, anybody who's got a soul in Africa should be allowed this kind of nonsense to come from France again. We don't need France. Africa doesn't need France. France needs Africa. And if they want to associate with us, it should be on African terms, not on French terms. We should be inviting who we want, not waiting for somebody to come and impose anything on us. So basically, Macron, people should show Macron the door as fast as possible. Be nice to him, give him some katikado or some other fufu to eat and get him out. We don't need him. Africa can survive without France, really.
Thank you. We'll be coming back to you. Just hold the line. Let's come back to the studio. Professor Mac Anthony-Political, I want us to look at this. The Guardian puts it that it is colonization 2.0. According to the Guardian, that the landing of the French president in Africa made French countries, leaders, puppet leaders, to see that French Africa is back. And also the Guardian puts it that it is a sign of more corruption, more coups, more misery to millions of Africans across the continent. Do you look in line with the Guardian? And the Guardian said the French were not coming because they want to solve internal problems across the African countries, French countries, but they were coming because of food crisis as a result of the Russia-Ukraine invasion.
Thank you again, Javis. I want to remind our viewers this particular afternoon that France as a nation has been one of the most abusive colonial masters that have ever existed. And one of the things that a lot of people do not know about France is that for the past 60 years, France has gradually lost its place in Africa. Why do I say so? If you go back as far as the 80s, you realize that France had over 40% of, in fact, they were controlling over 40% of our economy. But in recent days, based on the way most of the leaders precisely want to use in Cameroon, he has been signing different accords with different nations. France's economic influence in Africa has reduced around 20%. which means that they are losing their position. And the way you see China forging, entering into Africa, Russia is coming into Africa with a force.
Another colonization.
It seems to be a colonization. I will be sincere in saying that we do not need to depend on any European nation. Why? Because there is nothing when it comes to diplomacy called friendship. There is nothing. It's interest. So anytime a person or say a nation which is different from yours comes to you, they have one interest, their interest, not yours. So the coming of the French president into Africa was never for the good of the Africans. It has never been. Like the Guardian puts it, it is colonialism 2.0. Why would they say so? That's why I was showing that if you look at what is happening with France, France has lost much from what they used to hold in Africa. And gradually they have realized that if they do not have a grip over Africa, they will soon lose their place in the world. Because I will be sincere in saying this, France is where it is in the world because of the position they have in Africa. They have a total influence. They have, if you go looking at 14 different nations using the colonial French France, it is still called the colonial.
Yes,
French
it's
France.
still called the colonial French France.
The CFA.
And sadly, we are using it happily.
We are using it happily. So
and claiming
we are colonized people.
Claiming
we are independent.
We are independent because many Cameroonians have not really
what
looked at
CFA means.
the meaning of CFA, FCFA.
The France colonial
yes,
French currency. So we are using a currency which says we are colonialists. We are a colony. So we are busy using it, and that goes in 14 different nations. We have 14 different African nations in the West Africa and Central Africa using that particular currency.
A currency that France itself doesn't use.
That France doesn't use. A currency that is not produced in Africa, a currency that is produced in France, and the reserves are preserved in France. And when African nations go for their reserves, they give them as loans, which they have to pay back. We are indeed a colonized set of people.
And they pay in euro.
And they pay in euro.
And dollars.
Yes. And the funny thing about it is that each year, out of this reserve, France gains over 500 billion US dollars behind this reserve. I'm just talking of the reserve. I'm not talking of their businesses they run in Africa. Just the reserve. That is money that can transform Africa. We are in need of just, I think, 200,000 billion dollars to transform Africa, according to the UN. While we have 500 billion US dollar that is taken from Africa by France.
But Professor Mark, almost a similar amount like that has been invested in Ukraine already, in the war in Ukraine. With Africa need just 200, but
for them to
more than $200 billion have been used to fight Russia and Ukraine.
And that they are coming to Africa to ask African leaders to join their voices with Europeans against Russia. Russia has never been an enemy to Africa. I don't care whether people say they are an enemy. Russia had never been an enemy to Africa.
Okay.
From the time of independence, Russia was one of those nations which African leaders depended on in order to escape from the colonial rule.
Yeah, because Russia fight alongside MNC Mnangagwa in Zimbabwe against Putin was in Zimbabwe.
So when you look at it, you realize that coming to us Africans right now to lend a voice to Europeans to stand against Russia is hypocrisy on their part. But you hear Macron will claim that African leaders are hypocrites when because they have taken a neutral ground.
Because they have decided not to be aligned.
They have taken a neutral ground and do not want to involve themselves in what is happening. I don't think Ukraine needs Africa in order to win Russia. Nor does Russia need Africa in order to win. Whatsoever is happening in Europe remains with Europeans. It's not an African problem. The time has far gone when we used to go fight their war. They had a tribal war, the first tribal war between Europeans, which was called World War. They came and took Africans. The second tribal war, which was happening between Europeans, they came in and brought Africans, and they called it a world war. We do not need to involve ourselves in their issues. So let them not pull us into their basket of destruction. Okay. We are not part of it.
We're coming back to you.
And in fact, I want to say this. We are going to take our independence by this, because we are not an independent people. This is the manner through which we are going to take our.
So the Russia-Ukraine war is a window of opportunity for African countries to fully become an autonomous state in practical, not in theory.
Very true.
Mr. Edmond, a continent which is rich with abundant human natural resources, a continent that has a dark past of its colonial masters, with unacceptable crimes committed, especially narrowing down to Cameroon, the period of the UPC, also the assassination of Thomas Sankara, and also the assassination of Mohamed Gaddafi. We've had a lot of coup d'etats. We even have the UN former Security National Advisor John Bolton accepting that the United States has been carrying out coup d'etats in other nations, and we believe that Africa has witnessed a series of coup d'etat. And it was also alleged that Sankara was killed by CIA. And so with all of this cacophony, Africa still have a high level of dependency to European nation and France. How do you make of this when African leaders still lean on France, knowing all that has happened?
Thank you, Mr. Tah Mai, for that question. As far as I'm concerned, to me, in the 21st century, I don't so much have problem with France. I do have problem with the Africans and their leaders. Because the first question is, on what foundation did the Africans build their independence? Because Africans have had great minds that have conscientized, educate the Africans. If we are talking today about colonialism or neo-colonialism, I do believe that all the errors are still from Africans. Mr. Tah Mai, in 21st century, we are still talking about colonialism of Africa based on what they have gone through. When Dr. Kwame Nkrumah came out with his philosophy of conscientism,
when he said the way forward, the independence of Ghana
is meaningless unless all African territories are being liberated.
Emancipation for a different African state.
Actually, and he came out with good ideas. He conscientized the Africans that study the white man book, but don't behave like them. Telling the Africans to take good elements from their education and embedded it with us and make good use. If today, Cameroon, for example, we look at the forefathers, those that fought the independence we're talking of in quotes, people like people like Omyobel, Ernest Wanji, and the rest. You saw how they ended their lives. And today, Cameroon, for example, is talking about one Cameroon. The current regime, they are putting it forward as if they are the one that coined the idea of one Cameroon. Those that came out with the idea of one Cameroon were assassinated. They were killed.
Terrorists.
Yeah, they tagged them terrorists.
By the French government.
By the French government used the Africans. It was not solely for the French government, but they used the Africans in order to eliminate these fathers that could build a good foundation for the independence we're talking of. So if today we are still running back to the European countries, I don't blame them, but I blame the Africans, especially the leaders.
So are you saying that the leaders are kind of selfish?
Actually, they are not just selfish, but they are wicked. They are cruel.
How can we claim they are wicked and cruel? Where we have leaders who say they are providing potable water to their community, they are fighting terrorism and so on.
Mr. Tah Mai, there we say that because they are working on base of what? Self-interest. Africans are where they are because of self-interest. I will pinpoint that. If we look at, I will still go back with the idea of the UPC. That was the first political party in Cameroon. The UPC created in 1948. And the motto was immediate independence and reunification with British Southern Cameroon. Meaning they called for one Cameroon.
It was unification before independence.
Independence.
Independence before unification.
Thank you. And you see that because of that, if Macron is in Cameroon today, I was saying that the economy, if we look at the internal economy of France, is porous. They depend only on African countries. And if all the African countries, they are aware of that, and they can create what we call, like the Prof rightly said, America, when they came out with the policy of isolationism.
That was 1919.
Good. You discover that because of that policy, they came out with a lot of what they built good economy that even the Europeans that are benefiting from. So if we decide to come out with such policy, because with history, there's something with history. We said, if I should still reframe this definition, the study of importance of what past events in order to escape the errors of the past and plan for the future. So it was aligning those facts that are already there, that are giving us the good way, the way forward. But our current and past leaders, some of them, they shy away from, and we keep on blaming the Westerners. To me, it boils down to the Africans.
Okay. Mr. Fusi, are you there? Yes. I'm coming back to you.
And I told you that. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm coming back to you. Mr. Fusi, Edmond here in the studio has raised an issue that he doesn't blame France. That with all that has happened within the colonial era, the African leaders should be objective enough to take care of their people and shun the colonization, but instead they are embracing colonization. You had watched pictures when Macron landed in Cameroon. Hundreds, thousands of people welcome Macron at the Simalé airport alongside university students late at night. Can this happen in Paris?
The question is why? Why did the people come out?
Good. That's
What's
a
the
real
purpose?
question.
See, I totally agree with the preceding commentator about the fact that we should blame ourselves. We should blame Cameroonians. We should blame Africans, each and every one of us. Because in this day and age, we need absolutely zero from France. In fact, we've never needed anything from France, because all France has done is underdevelop Africa, impoverish Africa, taking everything from Africa to go build itself. France has all this network of super express highways. You can go from one city to the other in just a few minutes, and Cameroon has none of those. Why are we still subjugating ourselves to colonialism when we don't need it? I seem to recall this thing about Donald Trump talking about building a wall around America. I think Africa should be building a wall around itself to keep the Europeans out. We can survive extremely well, just as we did before the Europeans came to colonize us. In the village, you have, in our olden days, you had a compound. Every house had a wall around it. And then the father was the head of the compound. The mother was the taking care of the family, and we lived very well. We didn't need Europeans to come tell us whatever. If we needed Europeans, we could have gone to colonize them. We didn't do that because we didn't need them. So why are we still subjugating ourselves to Europe in this day and age? It is as simple as that. Tell France to get lost. Tell all the other colonizers to get lost because we don't need them. If you look at a case, for example, cocoa, which Ivory Coast is exporting in thousands of tons and things like that, what happens if Ivory Coast decides to withhold its cocoa for even just 2 or 3 years? They're not going to hurt. It's France that's going to hurt. It's Switzerland that's going to hurt, not France. So essentially, we need to hold back our resources, hold back our diamonds, hold back our oil, because if you have the diamonds in the ground, they're not going to be rot. They'll stay there and wait for when we need them. When we're ready to develop them on our own terms, then we can dig them up. And totally blame us.
How will the economy survive with these new dynamics you are bringing in place? Because the farmers who are doing this cocoa production need the market to get resources to take care of their family. But if we are holding back as export, as you put it, and also the diamonds and the rest, how will the economy survive in a continent where corruption is another issue?
Let me ask you a question. Sorry, you got cut off there, but let me ask you a question. How much of that money is staying in Africa? How much of the proceeds of the cocoa and the diamonds and stuff is staying in Africa? I live in a country where you can travel 200 kilometers in under 2 hours very safely.
Yeah.
65156.
How long does it take to go from Douala to Yaoundé?
It takes about.
It's a very, very tedious journey, right?
About 5 hours, 6 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours.
Hello?
5 hours.
Once we build ourselves and solidified our foundations, then, and we need the Europeans and whatever else, we can then call them and to partner with them. But for the moment, we can manage without them. Thank you very much.
Okay. I don't know if Anye is connected. Anye, are you there with us? Anye. Professor Mac Anthony-Political, I don't know, but let us come now to this aspect of colonialism, where we are looking at this 2.0 model, where we have Macron was received like Jesus Christ in Cameroon when he entered Jerusalem. We saw ministers galvanizing dance group to welcome Macron on taxpayers' money in a time when prices of commodities are all-time high, and a time when we have we are suffering from scarcity of fuel. Some filling stations are unable to have gas. Those who are using the normal petrol are still also struggling with prices. And also with the conflict in the northwest and southwest region, France promised 40 billion for reconstruction, but till date, I'm not sure the government has received any dime from the reconstruction budget, but yet coming again to seek for support.
You see, the entrance of Macron into Cameroon, like Jesus entering Jerusalem, being welcomed by thousands of Cameroonians at the airport, actually proved the state of mind which Africans do have. I don't think that if Mr. Biya is entering France, even 2 or 3 French people will come to stand on the airport to welcome him. Not to talk of students abandoning their beds to come welcome him.
It's not Bordeaux, Paris.
That was 2 p.m. in the night.
No, right? It was about
1 p.m.
11:30. Macron landed at 11:40.
So just imagine at that hour, from that time to 2 something, they were out. Question is, what for? To welcome who? Is it God? He is not a Cameroonian. I'm sure he was supposed to be received by a prime minister in the closet, then taken to the presidency. It was not something for Cameroonians to come out.
But they say official visit now.
Official visit or no official visit does not mean Cameroonians should go under the code for him. That shows the kind of mindset Cameroonians have. I mean, that will not only happen in Cameroon.
More than 1,000 were outside, of which the previous day was a working day.
Working day. And the funny thing is that in the midst of cold, rain. So, I am trying to pin this point that is a mindset problem. Don't forget, Africans, like I heard my brother mentioning that he blames Africans. At times, it is good to blame when you are not in the midst of it. For over 400 years, Africans, 500, not even 400, 500 years, Africans have been turned, toyed, pushed. In fact, they underwent slavery, colonialism, and then from colonialism, you claim that we have independence. We just mentioned here that we have France CFA, which we are still using. It means we're never given economic independence. We don't have it. And so, we claim that we are independent because they told us that they are giving you independence. Independence is not given. France never got independent because somebody wrote a document and gave them. They got up under a revolution, they seized power from the monarchy and transformed France to become a republic. The United States never got independent because they waited for Britain to give them independence. They went for a fight and they got their independence. In Africa, I was shocked and surprised that when those who stood up and said we want our independence, when they were killed, then they wrote some stuff and gave to an individual and said you are the leader. We have a situation in Cameroon. Those who fought for the independence of Cameroon never received independence. They were considered to be criminals and terrorists. Until today, their names have not been removed from that terrorism list. That's to make you understand there is a perspective in which we have been trained to believe and raising. Those who fight for the good of the people are enemies of the state.
But many were expecting that Macron will also come and remove this move from the terrorist list and declassify some of the UPC carnage.
That is one of the things that he said there during the so-called manipulated press conference, where he said he is going to establish an archive that will unveil the deeds of the French soldiers and the French in Africa during that period, and particularly in Cameroon. We are expecting that, but that is not all we need. We do not need France in Africa.
When you say manipulated press conference, there was a press conference. A press conference.
A press conference where questions that were expected to be asked were not asked because I believe they were doctored. Those who asked questions were chosen, and I'm sure they were given questions to ask. Anyway, that's just me talking. It's not just me talking. So before I land, I wanted to show something. You see, you asked me a question which I was answering, considering the fact that the French president came to Cameroon and we went out. I wanted to say that we have been toyed. In fact, our brains have been brainwashed for long and miseducated for a long period of time, that we hold on to the wrong education of who we are. We think that we are the second class of beings. And so we look onto them as the first class. Just look at it. If you are sitting with me here and a white man comes in, the way you treat the white man is different from the way you treat me.
I would treat
anyway,
you,
I am just telling you that
the way some would treat.
Okay, but that's the way
I would treat you equally because
that's the way majority of Africans. You might be an exception, but Africans would treat that white man with a difference than me.
Sometimes I'm tempted to ask them their passport. And
most of us, we have schooled in the same schools, but they have jobs well paid than we are. Why? They come to Cameroon. The Cameroon government will prefer to give them better positions and pay them higher than they pay their own citizens who are of the same class. Okay. So the question is, what has caused that? It is mentality problem. So we have a mental problem.
So you're saying that we should eradicate ourselves
from mental slavery.
Good. Not that ourselves can free our own mind.
True. Yeah. Until that happens, so Bob Marley was not wrong. Until we are mentally emancipated, there is no possibility for you to see a so-called president who is a puppet doing any good for the African people. He will be working for the Westerner because he sees the Westerner as his master.
The Guardian described former French leaders, current African leaders of former French colonies as puppets.
Puppets.
And the Guardian also said that these are people who are being controlled remotely by Macron. And they described, he said, Macron was 5 years at the time when His Excellency President Biya was president of the nation, and that he has come in his infancy state to still dominate those whom had been picked before. Do you agree with that phase of puppet? How are they puppet? We elected these people in 2018. Went for election. In Guinea, they went for election. In Burkina Faso, they went for election. In Equatorial Guinea, they went for election. But how do we call them puppet where we voted them?
Mr. Tama, before I come to your question, Professor has made some analysis here. I thought he would end by saying one foreign country came and helped them. He talked of France, that we saw how they fought for their independence. He talks of America, how we saw how they fought for their independence. And that is why I'm saying Africans, they themselves, it seems as if they're waiting for one Messiah to come and still fight for them. Mr. Tama. Okay, back to your question. Back to the question. I'm totally 100% agreed with the Guardian post. With the reason being that
the Guardian.
Okay,
the Guardian in US.
Okay. Yes, because it is mainly the continuation of these puppets. You believe with me that President Pobia in 1982, November 1982.
6 November.
6 November 1982. He was not elected. He merely continued from who? Amadou Ahidjo. If you go back to 1957 to 1958, where Andre Marimbida resigned as the PM, because they discovered that Andre Marimbida was a UPC in disguise, And they needed a good puppet, a good stooge that they could easily use, which was Amadou Ahidjo. And they made good use of Amadou Ahidjo right up to 1982, when something unprecedented happened, when President Paul Biya, he said his constitutional successor took over from him.
But after that, Biya has been elected. Biya was elected in 1992 presidential election. Biya was elected again.
Mr. Tah Mai, if you go back, I started my analysis by asking where the Africans as a whole and Cameroon in particular, where did they build their foundation? How they built their foundation, the foundation of the so-called independence.
My question, let me give you again my question.
Yes.
My question is, for example, we went for election in 2011. We went for election in 2018. We voted President Biya constitutionally. And we say these are leaders handpicked by the French government, of which French citizens in Paris did not take part in the election. How much can we, how can we understand this mathematics?
If we are talking about election, by election of President Paul Biya, of which up to date, they are still arguing, talking about the electoral code to be revived, to be touched. So that alone explains to you that from the date 1982 to present, there have not been a clear, free election in Cameroon. It is still merely the continuation from Amadou Ahidjo. If you look at the CPDM, it was mainly the change of words.
CNU.
The CNU. So that's what I'm saying, that they are right, because they have since Ahidjo was a good puppet or a stooge.
No, you cannot call Ahidjo like a stooge, because he himself was elected there.
By who?
After he was appointed, Ahidjo was elected.
By who?
He went for election. There was the time we had an election.
By who? In 1960, 1st January 1960.
No,
who elected him?
Ahidjo was not elected 1st January 1960.
Yes.
Ahidjo was appointed, but after the appointment as the prime minister.
Who appointed him?
I think we are
that is where the problem is.
I'm coming. I think we are talking to Cameroonians, and let's give them facts. Ahidjo was appointed prime minister after Bida resigned by the French government prior to independence. When the independence was granted on 1st January 1960 in the French Cameroon, and of course the reunification with British Southern Cameroon 1st October. After that, there was a first presidential election, which Ahidjo won the election.
Which Ahidjo won the election?
Yes.
Under the supervision of who? Still France.
As an observation body. This time with an independent
Still
Cameroon.
France. Still France. If we are here, we have all agreed, if not I and the Prof, that the independence of Africa as a whole, and Cameroon in particular, is still a dream. And you are still talking about the independent. So that explains that we have been having stooges or puppets as leaders.
No, but I still don't understand. These are people elected now. Gabon elected, Bongo in Chad, Debris was elected before his assassination, and now Muhammad Debris is in charge. Also in Guinea, in Sassou Nguesso, also DRC, where we have
Mr. Tah Mai, can I briefly something? I just wanted to say something. You just used Mahatma. It is very, very terrible using a man like that when we realized that there was a constitutional coup d'etat that took place in Chad. Considering that the president was elected, died in a so-called confrontation, and his son unilaterally dissolved the constitution of the country.
But they said people were not willing that they gave him the power.
Over power, and the French.
Yeah, Macron was there.
The French
Macron was
supported his leadership, then came to France to enthrone him. That is to make you understand that African nations, I'm using now Chad, do not have independence. I also come back to say it. We are still using France CFA. That already tells you we are still colonies of France. So we are not independent. Let Africans know that. And it is in our place to stand up and take that independence. We can't keep waiting for France to give it to us. So they will never give it.
Professor Mark, we have been singing "O Cameroon, thou cradle of our fathers."
That is a camouflage.
So you are telling me that
it's a camouflage.
So we should be singing
political independence.
Where did Cameroon gain her independence?
That's
a simple question,
brother. Political independence without economic independence is no independence.
Okay, we'll be coming back to you guys in the studio. Mr. Fusi. Mr. Fusi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you've followed the discussion. You want to make a remark before I post my question?
I still continue to blame the people, blame ourselves. It's all our fault. There's something that the Roman Catholic Church uploaded right up front called the doctrine of discovery. Okay?
Yes.
And then it came from Europe, it came from the Catholic Church, and then we Africans took ownership of it as if we were our own firstborn son. This has absolutely nothing to do with us. It's a European thing driven to take over African resources and use them. So I don't care about what elections did or didn't do. I still blame each and every one of us for not taking the mantle and taking this issue into their own hands and changing things for our own benefit. Why on earth are we so stuck on religion, on dogma, on doctrine that came from Europe and the Middle East when the people themselves who preach this nonsense down to us are not practicing it? We are traumatized. One of the reasons we're traumatized is because these guys use religion as a wedge to come traumatize us, to come neutralize us and just soften us and make us believe any kind of crap. They force feed us like babies and we accept it. Macron, you talk about Macron. Macron is a baby compared to President Paul Biya. So why is a baby coming to control his grandpa or his father in Cameroon and elsewhere? This is something that's so messed up, and we need to sit down as a people with very sane heads and clear heads and try to analyze this thing. This has nothing to do with politics per se. It's a question of self-interest. Africans need to take things into their own hands peacefully and try to resolve this. You can start by talking and listening to each other, for example. We don't have to fight about it. Just sit down, okay, have a meal, very quiet, and start from there and be determined and purposeful and proceed in such a way that you can solve it. There's something in physics called concentric circles, right? If you drop a stone in the middle of a pond, it produces circles that kind of go around each other. You can start with a little nucleus with a little group of well-intentioned people like my media TV. You sow the seed, the mustard seed here, and people take it and run with it. We can solve this problem ourselves because only we can solve our problems. If we depend on France or even Russia, you say Russia has we have no history or enmity, but they're still coming to us. I don't know any black man who's been to Russia or to France to try to claim any part of their land. They're the ones coming to us because they see something in us. It's up to us to discover the value that we have. I'm saying all these things because, I lived in Cameroon. I was born in Cameroon, okay? Now I live in North America. I was born in Cameroon, and I never took this nonsense for what it was. I did things, I changed things in the village level. I changed things in high school, secondary school, and that kind of stuff, and I'm still doing the same thing where I am now. If you talk to the authorities over here, they are kind of surprised that I, as an African, I'm not quote-unquote behaving like an African because I believe in change. My principal in secondary school said, always leave something better than you found it. Leave a place better than you found it. And that's the mission that I subscribe to. And I'm calling on like-minded people, similar to me, to take this thing into our own hands and change for our own good. We can start by doing the necessary sacrifices. For example, like I said, we follow our exports for a few years. The diamonds are not going to rot in the ground. The cocoa we can hold back and sell when the market prices are high, and we call the shots. We organize the rules. We write the rules for our own purposes. It's a question of interest, like somebody said from the beginning. Diplomacy is all about interest. So what is the African interest in all of this? I know we've been traumatized for so long, but it's time for us to cure ourselves. We need some kind of, we need a psychiatrist or psychologist general to kind of wean us off of this religious nonsense that we've been suckered into and which is kind of traumatizing us. We accept everything peacefully without contesting everything because we have this doctrine of colonization that is sitting up front and traumatizing us. Let's wake up, people. Let's wake up and only we can solve our own problems. If we don't wake up, I'm sorry, we'll continue. What's happening in the Mediterranean?
Mr. Fusi, how do you understand again this situation where the same white man that brought the religion, brought the Bible talked about homosexuality being sinful and being unacceptable. The same Bible talked about against abortion, that abortion is a sin and unacceptable. But these are the same vice being practiced and being promoted by the same people who came to spread religion and Christianity. How do we
exactly? Exactly, because these guys are going to use by these guys I mean the Europeans and all the fly-by-night colonizers, including the Asians, the Chinese, the Arabs, or whatever it takes. They'll use anything, any tool in their toolbox to take us over and colonize us. When it comes to religion or using the same vices that religion condemns, for example, homosexuality, aren't they promoting homosexuality in Africa and that kind of stuff? So they'll use anything to get us. And it's our fault, once again, it's our fault to be gullible enough to swallow all this nonsense and take it as it is. We as a people have to wake up, people. Wake up and smell the coffee, like they say back in the Western countries. Wake up, because only we and no one else but we can solve our own problems. If we don't see this, then I say we have a serious problem. Houston, we have a problem.
Thank you very much. We'll stay put. We'll come back to you, Professor Mac Anthony-Political. Let us again come now to the question that was Anye. Are you there with us? Anye, I can see you. I can see you. I don't know. I can see you, Mr. Anye. I can see you. Hello? Yes, I want to get your own reaction from what we have been discussing. Hello, Anye?
Yeah, Javis, I can hear you now.
I want to get your own reaction from this visit of the French president. Yes, I can get you. Macron's visit described by The Guardian as...
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can get you. Macron's visit described...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So you can hear me now. Can I go on?
Go on, I can get you.
Can you hear me? Okay, so... Okay, so...
Go on, I can get you. I can get you, Mr. Anye. Go on.
What happened? I think the visit of the president was I think it was the visit was on point, but I suppose because he came in and he was promising to sort of reform the previous relationship as Africa was. So it seems to me that he is trying to present a new type of relationship. So he created this organization called I think the Council of the Presidential Council for African the Presidential Council for Africa, where they have this like about 13 members that he's trying to like refurbish a new kind of relationship with Africa. So, but I think if we are to look at the historical context of France-Afrique, it wasn't the relationship was actually horrible. There were like multiple assassinations of actually Pan-African leaders on the continent, and there were the relationship the leaders that many of these Francophone African countries had were not the real leaders, were not the nationalist leaders that they wanted. So there was a lot of manipulation, there was a lot of underground networks that France-Afrique brought to some of these countries. We remember what happened to Guinea when Guinea decided not to go along with the Accord de Coopération that was brought and signed by Charles de Gaulle and Jacques Foucault and all those that were involved with the former French colonies. So I think if Africans are to move forward the way some of the panelists have said, they have to take the mantle, because many of these countries, if you look at the France itself, the CFA France, about 50 to 65% of foreign reserves of these countries are sent to the French treasury. And this is very disturbing because these countries, they don't even have enough money. And you say the aim, France would claim that the aim is to stabilize the CFA. Of course, it's tried to stabilize it, but you see, take for example, like in 2015, about $14 billion was sent to the state treasury in France, in exchange for stabilizing the CFA. So these are things. So these countries are not even independent, economically independent, if you want to put it that way. So there is no incentive for the leaders to boost the economy, because they know that France is keeping inflation at a relatively stable rate. So there's no incentive to boost the economy to work on all of that, and see they can get away with doing all sorts of things that the people don't want. And if you see, take for example Cote d'Ivoire, you see majority of the development that came into Cote d'Ivoire was concentrated at the capital in Abidjan. And you look at the majority of the African people are in the informal sector, not in the formal sector. So if you neglect the way the European Central Bank try to stabilize the currency is in accordance with their own system. So it's not that they are not and sort of like in accordance with the formal sector in many of these African countries. So it's like there's a disconnect between the formal sector and the informal sector. I saw a trend where employment in the agricultural sector has been decreasing. So I'm saying that if African countries, if they have to come up with a new relationship between the former French colonies and France, it has to be on the terms where the people have to be involved in the decision making. The deals have to be transparent. All the African sale and all these background network, there has to be accountability and transparency, so that the people can know the sort of deals, and in the end, all the virtues of good governance has to come in place. Democracy, transparency, the freedom of the media, the freedom of press, all these things have to come in place, so that real economical relationship can be established. And the African people have to rise up. They have to demand for these things, because there's a lot of passivity, and you would understand, because there is fear that some of these governments are quite tyrannical. So again, you try and understand that there's a lot of fear and all of that. But I mean, people have to put away those fears and begin to demand the right things from their leaders. I think that would be a good thing for the continent, and even for France. They have to support freedom, human rights advocates. They have to support those that are.
We are out of time. We are out of time. Professor Mark, we want to again apologize for the technical hitches for today, which consume most of our time, because we cannot push other programs to start a bit late. So we just have to stay professional. Your take-home message.
It is very, very important that for Africans to get to understand that if we have to move Africa ahead, each African needs to be responsible enough. It is not the responsibility of the Europeans to develop Africa, because no nation will come to Africa and develop Africa when Africans are there, except we are saying that we have decided to lose our birthrights over our own continent. It is our continent. We can take this continent to the next level if we all choose to reform and transform our minds. So get involved and make Africa the dream you have always dreamed. Let it be a better place.
Mr. Edmond, want to apologize for the late start and that's consumed much of our program. But we thank you guys for all those of you for your time, your dedicatedness. Your last word before we're out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Tah Mai. I just want to call on all the youths, especially Cameroon youth, to involve in politics, register themselves and have their voters cards. Though most often we said election is rigged. They may rig election that yours is not even there. So let's register and let's participate in the politics of our nation, of our continent, so that we'll build a continent by ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fusi, before we go, your last word. The take-home message.
You said about the youth participating in politics, and basically, yeah, we need to participate in the rebuilding of this house we call our own in Africa. I'm a Pan-Africanist, but then we should go beyond politics. We should be able to multitask and solve every problem ourselves. Involved in technology, involved in starting your own farms, involved in being self-sufficient in every way possible. We should not be dependent on Europe or America for handouts. This is the definition of a beggar. How can you be a beggar and expect to build your own nation? Do whatever sacrifices you can, or you have to as a youth. Don't go die in the Mediterranean. Be trying to change right there and die in the process if you have to, but change begin from the inside. Okay. And that's the only way we're going to do it. I thank all my young people, and I'm ready to mentor anyone, absolutely anyone who wants to affect that change. And I'm doing by example. I'm already mentoring and changing youth out here in North America, and I'm prepared to do the same thing for youth in Cameroon. They need a leader. They need some kind of ayatollah to lead them out of the darkness. And I would join any like minds to do that, to change for them.
You said they need some like ayatollah of Iran.
Well, I believe in an ayatollah of Africa for this time, so we need to take the people by the front.
So you're taking back to the days of the Cold War.
Not really. No, that's not in that sense. We need somebody who can take issues in their own hands, come inside and say enough of this nonsense.
Okay, I get your point. I get your point now. Thank you very much. Mr. Anye, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, Mr. Anye. And of course, we want to thank you guys, all those of you watching us on Facebook. We really apologize again because of the technical problems we had at the beginning of the program that took a lot of our time. You want to be a panelist to this program, contact me on the numbers on your screen. I will include you to our WhatsApp group, and when I drop the topic to be discussed for the week, you indicate your presence and we will put you on the program for that week. And also to those of you who may have suggested topics that you want us to look at, contact me on the numbers on your screen. Until we meet again, no matter the matter, what matters is your matter. And what should matter for Africans is that we should go to the days of Bob Marley, where we have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, but none of ourselves can free our own mind. Thank you very much. My name is Tah Mai Javis from Cameroon's economic capital, Fengo John Bange Bonamusadi. Bye-bye.